I'm recording, just so you know.
Good evening. Welcome to the Morrison County Board of Adjustment public hearing for April 1st, 2025. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Have a few items to cover before we get started. Please sign in at the door if you've not already done so. There you will also find a detailed handout of the step-by-step procedure we will follow tonight if you wish to take one. Please put any electronic devices on silent mode at this time. Also, please note that all testimony is being recorded for the record. Members of the Board of Adjustment are appointed by the County Board of Commissioners with one member from each of the 5 commissioner districts. Land Services staff is here to assist the Board of Adjustments with its duties. The task of the Board of Adjustment is to consider requests for variances and appeals from an order, requirement, or decision made by a county zoning official in accordance with the state law and county ordinance. Each request is considered on its own merit. The burden of proving a practical difficulty rests with the applicant. If a variance is granted, it is granted to the land, not to the landowner. There's a protocol for how we will proceed tonight. For each variance request on the agenda, we'll hear a staff report, hear testimony from the applicants, and the board will discuss and gather more information as needed. Next, I will ask if there is anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this request. I will ask each party to come to the podium, state their name and address for the record, give their testimony. Please be as factual as possible, and direct all statements and questions to me. After all testimony is complete, I will close the public hearing portion of the process. The board will then review and discuss the case in terms of our finding of fact criteria as required by the Minnesota statute and county ordinance. We'll have a series of votes, discuss whether conditions be made, and have a final motion to approve or deny the request based on those findings. After this final vote on your request, you may leave if you wish. We only have one agenda item tonight. Jacob and Brooke Caro, application for a variance to exceed allowable animal units. Please state your name and address for the record.
Jacob Caro, 17008 433rd Street, Little Falls, Minnesota.
Brooke Caro, I live at the same address.
Go ahead.
Brent Loagi. I'm a consultant engineer with Central Crop Consulting. My address is 2056 370th Street, Minneota, Minnesota.
Ian Olson, Environmental Services Manager Consultant with Central Crop Consulting, 351 Burlington Circle, Marshall, Minnesota.
Thank you. And before we hit the staff report, George, on the last application we had here, you recused yourself. Will you be doing that tonight?
No, sir, I will not have a statement here. A conflict of interest does not exist with this applicant per Minnesota statute 10A.07. The perceived conflict of interest that I claim with the Parkview Acres application was an employer-employee relationship that does not exist in any way with this applicant.
Thank you. Ms. Amy, staff report.
All right, Mr. Chair, just let me get my slides to advance. All right, Mr. Chair, I'm just for the benefit of everybody here, you have received a full packet that includes the full application and my staff report along with several figures. This is an abbreviated staff report, but I do have the full report and any attachments that you received to refer to. So I'm going to go through this quite quickly. So this is an aerial photograph of the property that we are considering today for an animal unit cap overage. And then here's some an oblique image of the property. And then here is the property also with a wetland layer and the shoreland layer turned on. And then here is a zoomed out aerial map of the area with the feedlot layer turned on. The green dots are active registered feedlots and the red dots are inactive feedlots. And here is the site drawing provided by the applicant within their application, along with a plat map of fields that they're utilizing for manure management. Here are some photographs taken at the site viewing. And then a few of the application and staff report highlights. Again, this is a request to exceed the allowable animal unit cap by 200 or 2,540 animal units. If this variance is approved, the next step in this process is a conditional use permit application before the Planning Commission and for ultimate consideration by the county board. And then also a Minnesota Pollution Control Agency permit also must be sought because of the size of this. This ultimately would be under the jurisdiction of the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. Also, a mandatory environmental assessment worksheet must be completed before feedlot permitting. Just to give you an idea of that, the type of information the environmental assessment worksheet will contain is geology and soil types, water resources including surface, ground, and volume, wastewater and stormwater, fish, wildlife, plant communities and sensitive ecological features, air quality, noise, transportation, and cumulative potential effects. All of this information would be presented at the conditional use permit portion of the application process. This information has not been supplied today. It's in progress. And so I just wanted to make you aware that that information would be forthcoming in the next phase of application. And then just to note that 6 individuals have submitted comments before the hearing. Some have submitted multiple comments, but it's from 6 individuals. I'm going to go through that public comment now, if that's okay with you, Mr. Chair.
Please.
All right. So the first comment is from John Tice and Chuck Perrins from Little Falls Township, and they are speaking in their capacity as Little Falls Township board members. The purpose of this letter is to express support for Jacob and Brooke Caro's application for a variance to exceed to allowable animal units located in the northeast quarter of the southeast Section 18, Township 40, Range 31, Little Falls Township. It is our concerted opinion that this application for variance is acceptable and reasonable within Little Falls Township. The Little Falls Township Comprehensive Plan, under the land use portion of the comprehensive plan, promotes land use goals and policies and the implementation thereof through the following related imperatives: promote agricultural endeavors on the most productive land, and encourage agricultural activities. Therefore, given the nature of the variance request, we believe it to be in concert with these Little Falls Township Comprehensive Plan goals. Similarly, we believe this request for variance to also be well aligned with those of Morrison County's Comprehensive Land Use Plan as well. We request favorable consideration to be given to this variance application. The next one is from Jim Ostley. He is a livestock development and planning specialist, and he's representing the Minnesota Department of Agriculture. The livestock team at the Minnesota Department of Agriculture was contacted by Jacob and Brooke Caro of Enchanted Dairy LLC regarding a variance application that, if approved, would allow them to expand their current dairy operation to 5,040 animal units. The proposed project expansion exceeds the 2,500 animal unit cap specified in the Morrison County zoning ordinance. Zoning is an important tool for governments to utilize regarding strategic planning of resources and for welfare of the residents and businesses that reside within its jurisdiction. As science, technology, and industry standards change and improve, it is important to review the rules that were once created for a standard that may no longer exist. Many of the zoning ordinances that were enacted decades ago incorporated numbers for caps and setbacks that had no data-driven validation, and we didn't have tools available to really determine impact. A variance is an excellent opportunity to review a proposed project more closely, thoroughly review impacts, and make an informed decision. Today, we have tools such as the Odor from Feedlot Setback Estimation Tool, or OFFSET, and the Minnesota Feedlot Annualized Runoff Model, MinFarm, developed by the University of Minnesota to assist in making informed decisions and policy. It is applaudable for a local government to periodically review its zoning ordinances to include changes in industry and incorporate scientific and resource-based information. Below are some key points to remember as your board undergoes a review of the Enchanted Dairy LLC variance request. But note, Minnesota has and continues to have some of the most stringent policies and rules regarding the environment. The Minnesota Pollution Control Agency is committed to protecting our natural resources, and since its adoption, Minnesota Rules Chapter 7020 have been reviewed and updated as the livestock sector of agriculture has progressed. Minnesota is one of the few states that require environmental assessment worksheets at certain animal unit thresholds that will look even further into the impacts made by a proposal before any permit on any level of government can be given. Farming has changed since many local governments enacted feedlot zoning ordinances 30 years ago. Family farms, which still are the vast majority today, 98% according to the United States Department of Agriculture's Economic Research Service, have changed as well. Where it was once feasible for a person to reach out to a lender for the purchase of land, equipment, and animals, today some family farms have become larger to support multiple families in one farming business. In the late 1990s, feedlots with 2,000 animal units were nearly unheard of in Minnesota. Today, 1,000 to 2,000 animal units is not uncommon. Minnesota environmental rules have adapted to comply and protect karst areas, sensitive environmental features, water sources, and community residents. Rules are backed by scientific data regarding construction methods, design, and technology. Examples include vegetative buffer infiltration, tree belts to prevent odor, and feed additives that reduce the amount of phosphorus excreted by swine. Others include equipment designed to spread manure at specific rates by field location to prevent over-application and to automatically feed specific animals based on their nutritional requirements. Feedlots that plan to use over 10,000 gallons of water a day or 1 million gallons of water in a year are required to apply for a water appropriations permit from the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. Prior to permit approval, the DNR researches any potential negative effects on water supply and quality in the area. The MPCA requires manure generated by this size of feedlot to be stored in a structure that is designed by an engineer and meets the requirements of Minnesota Rules Chapter 7020. Along with meeting the required specifications, any permit given by the MPCA would require review, inspection, operations and maintenance plans, and would require a manure management plan that would require manure application to fields, does not run off, saturate, or over-fertilize. Manure is an all-natural fertilizer which allows farmers to reduce the use of chemical fertilizers applied to fields and increase organic material and water capacity of soil for crop production. Farmers that generate excess manure beyond their personal use can then sell to other farmers, thus reducing their reliance on chemical fertilizers. Dairy farms require large amounts of forage in the form of alfalfa. Alfalfa is a perennial legume that fixes nitrogen in the soil and root and reduces runoff because vegetation in the field is always present. Economic impacts of livestock are also important to consider. As farms get larger, they can often weather several years of low market prices because they can spread that loss over more acres or animals, keeping the business in the area. The Minnesota Department of Agriculture's Economic Impact Study on the dairy industry states that dairy production at the farm level has a multiplier effect of 1.7 for every dollar of output. Minnesota's dairy production creates economic activities in other economic sectors, including agriculture, manufacturing, transportation, trade, services, finance, insurance, real estate, and construction. The new publication by Iowa State Extension called Comprehensive Review of Iowa's Dairy Industry states the annual economic impact of a single dairy cow is $25,495. This multiplier effect can add value to local feedstuffs by creating demand for grains and hay, contributing to the tax base, paying employees who in turn use their salary to spend locally and send their children to local schools. The 2020 report, The Role of Dairy Farmers in Minnesota's Economy, by the University of Minnesota Extension, revealed that an average Minnesota dairy farm generates $1.6 million to the economy and $48,000 in local taxes. According to the 2020 report on Minnesota farm finances, note this is if the farm operation does not rely on other farm income outside of the specific listed, like other livestock or crops. The overall net return per cow was $219. The United States Census Bureau reports the average household, which is 2.5 people, income to be $77,706 in 2021. This would mean a dairy farm would roughly need 354 cows per 2.5 people part of the business. According to the 2020 nationwide dairy labor survey, the average number of employees on dairies is 11.5 full-time and 2 part-time. Agricultural statistics show that Morrison County has a long history as a leader in the state of Minnesota for dairy production. Because of that long history, the region has a good supply chain built around it to meet the needs of dairy producers, which in turn drives the local economy. The livestock team at the Minnesota Department of Agriculture supports livestock proposals and expansions that follow the stringent environmental and zoning regulations found in Minnesota. Livestock agriculture is vital to Minnesota, and more specifically, Morrison County. Farm statistics from the National Agricultural Statistics Service have shown a trend in farm sizes. Most farms are getting larger. However, increases in small and micro farms is also on the rise due to niche markets and the locally grown movement. Regulations must follow and allow for these business trends if agriculture is to continue. Without agriculture, without livestock, without the desire for families to grow and expand their businesses, what is rural Minnesota left with? That is from, Jim Ostley. The next comment is from David Zimmerman. I respectfully request your serious consideration for the proposed amendment or variance to the Morrison County Land Use Control Ordinance. The ordinance is designed to serve and govern all stakeholders in our county, including individuals, families, commercial business, small business, agriculture, residential, and commercial zones. The zoning and planning land use is intended to harmonize the balance and benefits of all stakeholders living, working, and enjoying our region and county resources. Any changes to the zoning and planning has long-term impact to the region and possible competing benefits or disadvantages to all constituents invested in the region and county. Therefore, any significant change proposed, variance or amendment contemplated, requires a serious study and analysis to be considered successful for all parties. Any significant proposed change, either amendment or variance of nature, should require a data-based informed solution, both scientific and factual data, including all stakeholder inputs in the equation, to be a successfully governed guideline in future decades. Respectfully request a study to harmonizing agricultural facilities benefits, chicken, turkey, hogs, dairy, livestock, etc., against residential and environmental benefits, looking at the best solution for all parties impacted and governed by zoning and planning. The harmonizing study, as a suggestion only, might include the following criteria: an environmental and economic impact study, including allowed concentration of animal unit cap facilities per square mile, per population in comparable counties in our state, animal unit caps, levels and number of animal units in comparable counties, review of variance allowances and establishing past practice, benefits and non-benefits to each stakeholder, and a county survey or stakeholders, and for all residents to determine the balance of harmonization that really exists in our county and giving residents a voice in the process. All of the above is a mere suggestion to make a difficult decision more appealing in the long term, governing our land and resources. And then this next was also submitted by David Zimmerman.
Sir, after the staff report, we'll get to a public comment and you can go up to the podium and speak then. Thank you.
So this also was submitted by David Zimmerman, and this is titled Information Paper, and the subject is financial liability for property loss or damage caused by neglect. Neglect is defined as doing less than a reasonable, prudent individual would do to protect property. Legality is not the issue. Being legal does not eliminate neglect. Failure to meet the deadline is not an excuse to justify a decision that is not prudent. Relevant questions. 1, does historical data support this increase? The animal unit cap has been increased before. Do documented nitrate contamination levels support this request? Is it prudent to increase the animal unit cap without this documentation? 2, if landowners permit manure application on their property and that application has negative impact on adjacent property, who is liable for damages or fines? 3, does the county or do county employees incur any liability for decisions that are not supported by prudent documentation? 4, has the county developed a comprehensive plan that will establish responsibility for monitoring and management of environmental issues incurred by the proposed increase? And 5, does the requester have a plan for land restoration if environmental or business developments require herd reduction? Okay, and then there's a third comment from David Zimmerman. I respectfully oppose the variance application for the construction of a livestock facility, parcel 16003000. Objection is based on potential economic and environmental harm to the region. Economic opposition, adjacent landowner who has invested in property for residential and recreational purposes and nature preservation may be potentially harmed both economically and conditionally by a level 1, 2, or 3 or supersized level X livestock facility in the neighborhood. Environmental opposition, physical location of a level 1, 2, 3 or supersized level X is, in our opinion, detrimental to the watershed, soil, subsoil, and noise smell of the entire region. The close proximity to a federal refuge, Crane Meadows, is a potential and problematic issue regarding preservation of land and water resources. Expansion of notice and public inputs. A livestock facility of this size and scope has an impact to the entire region, both from an economic and environmental perspective. Therefore, respectfully request an expansion of the half-mile notice as per the Morrison County Land Use Control Ordinance. Given the facility proximity to Rice Creek, Rice and Skunk Lake, and a major freshwater aquifer in the region, the public notice may be required to gather stakeholder inputs outside the half-mile notice. Please accept this notice of opposition as part of the public input. The next one is from Larry Korf and Neil Korf. I respectfully oppose the variance application for the construction of a livestock facility on parcel 16003000. My opposition is based on the significant economic and environmental harm this facility may pose to the region. Economic opposition. The adjacent landowner has made substantial investments in the property for residential, recreational, and nature preservation purposes. The introduction of a level 1, 2, 3, or an industrial scale livestock facility in close proximity poses a serious economic threat devaluing property, undermining investment, and reducing the overall desirability of the area. Additionally, the facility's presence could negatively impact the region's natural assets. Environmental opposition. The proposed facility's location presents serious environmental concerns, including potential contamination of the watershed, soil, and subsoil, as well as increased noise and odor pollution across the entire region. Of particular concern is the facility's proximity to the federally protected Crane Meadows National Wildlife Refuge, an area critical for wildlife conservation and water resource protection. The risk of groundwater contamination, surface runoff, and habitat degradation must be fully assessed before allowing any development of this scale. Expansion of public notice and stakeholder input. Given the substantial economic and environmental implications, the public notice radius must be expanded beyond the current half-mile requirement as per the Morrison County Land Use Control Ordinance. The facility's impact extends far beyond the immediate vicinity, particularly due to its proximity to Rice Creek, Rice and Skunk Lakes, a major freshwater aquifer that serves the region. These sensitive water resources demand a broader stakeholder engagement process to adequately address concerns from affected residents, businesses, and environmental agencies beyond the narrow half-mile radius. I formally submit this opposition as part of the public record. I urge the board to deny this variance application and uphold its responsibility to protect the economic stability, environmental integrity, and quality of life in the region. Let's see. The next one is also from Larry Korf and Neil Korf. I respectfully request thorough and serious consideration of the proposed amendment or variance to the Morrison County Land Use Control Ordinance. The ordinance is designed to govern and serve the interests of all stakeholders in our county, including individuals, families, small businesses, commercial enterprises, agricultural operations, and residential communities. The purpose of zoning and planning regulations is to strike a fair balance that ensures all stakeholders can coexist while preserving the region's economic, environmental, and residential integrity. The need for comprehensive stakeholder input. Any changes to zoning and planning regulations carry long-term consequences for the region, potentially creating competing benefits and disadvantages for residents, businesses, and agricultural operations. Therefore, any substantial amendment or variance must be subject to a rigorous and transparent study that incorporates comprehensive stakeholder engagement. A data-driven, informed approach rooted in scientific analysis and factual evidence is necessary to ensure that any zoning modifications align with long-term sustainability, economic viability, and community well-being. The perspectives of all stakeholders, including residents, businesses, agricultural operators, and environmental advocates, must be actively included in the decision-making process. Request for a comprehensive impact study. I respectfully request that the board conduct a thorough harmonization study to assess the balance between agricultural facility expansion, including poultry, swine, dairy, and other livestock operations, and the residential and economic interests of the county. To ensure a well-informed and balanced decision, the study could include the following key components: environmental and economic impact analysis, evaluate the impact of large-scale agricultural facilities on water resources, air quality, soil integrity, property values, and local economies. Comparative county analysis, assess animal unit concentration and density limits per square mile and per population in similar counties across the state to determine best practices. Review of variance allowances and precedents. Examine historical variance approvals and denials to establish a consistent regulatory standard. Comprehensive stakeholder study, conduct a countywide survey to gather input from all residents, business owners, and agricultural operators regarding their perspectives on zoning regulations, economic impact, and environmental concerns. ensuring equitable decision-making for future generations. A decision of this magnitude should not be made in isolation or without broad-based stakeholder input. Instead, it should be approached as an opportunity to create a fair, balanced, and forward-thinking land use policy that will serve both current and future generations. These recommendations are not intended to hinder progress, but rather to ensure that decisions reflect the best interests of the entire county. Thoughtful and data-driven governance will enhance public trust and confidence in the county's ability to make fair and sustainable zoning decisions. Thank you for your time and consideration. I appreciate the board's commitment to ensuring responsible and well-balanced land use governance for Morrison County. Let's see, and then Larry and Neil also provided a sheet on the Blandings turtle. And I could pass that down for you to see if you'd like. And then there is another submittal. I'm just going to get to the end of it here. There is another submittal from Larry Korf. And it's kind of a combination of a letter and some data from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. I did forward this to you, so I'm going to read the letter, but if you want to see the data, I can pass that down if you didn't have a chance to look at it. Protecting our water resources is essential for the health and well-being of our community. Given the increasing concerns about environmental contaminants, particularly PFAS, it is imperative that we take proactive measures to safeguard our natural resources. Recommendation is a moratorium on variances. We strongly recommend placing an immediate moratorium on any variances related to agricultural practices, industrial activities, or developments that could potentially impact our water resources. This moratorium will provide the necessary time to conduct a thorough review and ensure that any future activities are in line with our community's environmental and health standards. Comprehensive environmental study. It is crucial to undertake a comprehensive environmental study to assess the current state of our water resources and identify potential sources of contamination. This study should include water quality testing, impact assessment, and risk mitigation strategies. 3, update the 1998 county ordinance. The findings from the environmental study should inform an update to the 1998 county ordinance. This update should reflect the latest scientific knowledge and regulatory standards, ensuring robust protection for our water resources. Stakeholder engagement. It is essential to involve all stakeholders in this process, giving them an opportunity to voice their concerns and contribute to the decision-making process. Public hearings, community meetings, and transparent communication channels will help build trust and ensure that the community's well-being is prioritized. By taking these steps, we can ensure that our water resources are protected for current and future generations. We urge you to act swiftly and decisively to implement these recommendations. And then the data is from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency Lakes and Streams Water Quality Dashboard. And it also talks about cow manure runoff and how that affects chlorophyll A levels in the lake, nutrient leaching, water contamination, eutrophication, soil erosion. And then there is some data on PFAS and contaminated biosolids, feed and water. So that's the data part. Okay, and then the last part is the facts regarding the location of a 5,000 animal unit facility in a major wetland environment adjacent to Crane Meadows, a National Wildlife Refuge. The attached information confirms the Morrison County water quality, specifically Rice and Skunk Lakes, is deteriorated, and major groundwater and surface water contamination of nitrates from agriculture being of concern. Rice and Skunk Lakes are in the danger zone, caused mainly by phosphorus and chlorophyll compared to other lakes in the state. Impact from manure, runoff, and leaching into groundwater are major contributing factors. PFAS, which are forever chemicals, spreading on agricultural land from feedlots, and he included the executive summary on RCRA regulations on PFAS. Protecting our water resources is essential for the health and well-being of our community. Recommend Morrison County officials and governments place a moratorium on any variance and complete a comprehensive environmental study to update the 1998 county ordinance, giving all stakeholders an opportunity to have a voice in the community's well-being. And the last comment I have is from Tom Behringer, and he is from Bongards Premium Cheese. My name is Tom Behringer, and I work for Bongards Creameries. Bongards is a farmer-owned cooperative with 257 member owners, and we operate 2 manufacturing plants in Minnesota and 1 in Tennessee that employ 625 people. Our plant in Perham produces natural cheeses and whey products, and the other 2 plants produce processed cheeses. The dairy industry in Minnesota is constantly changing, and the number of dairy farms is declining. The main reason is that when farmers decide to retire, there's not always a daughter or son to take over. The profitability of our cooperative would not be possible without the dedication of farmers that have invested in not only their individual farms, but also their cooperative, their cities, and the state. Our member owners range in size from 20 to 10,000 cows. It literally takes all dairy farmers to maintain a successful dairy industry. Dairy farmers need many local services to operate their farms. Milk haulers, feed suppliers, equipment dealers, electrical and fuel suppliers all rely on farmers. With the average age of a dairy farmer being over 50, our industry in Minnesota is going to have to adapt in order to thrive. Bongards products reach customers across the globe. We sell cheese to the Middle East and Central America and whey products to Asia. Minnesota dairy farmers are feeding the world today, and we need farmers like Jake and Brooke to continue to make quality milk so that we can meet the needs of a growing market. I ask you today to support the request by Enchanted Dairy to benefit your local economy and all dairy farmers in Minnesota. All right, Mr. Chair, that's all I've got.
That's it. All right. Well, thank you. Before I ask you what you have to add to that or adjust, revise, change, just for the record, I visited Monday. Clint?
I visited with Darren Welly from the Shoreline Specialist on Thursday and met Jake out there on Thursday. I couldn't make Friday.
Got it. Marv?
I and George were out there on Friday.
Perfect. Thank you. Anything to add to the original report or address in the application?
Not at this time. Well,
Do you have
we
your
have a
PowerPoint?
Yes,
Yep.
if that's what you mean, yes.
Yeah, we'll pull that up.
Yeah, sorry,
All right,
thank you.
thank you.
Let's make a vote.
Public comment, well, we'll get to that here in a second, but it's the applicant's turn to talk. Yep, I read that at the beginning here. Thank you.
Floor is yours. All right, thank you. Good evening, We are Jacob and Brooke Carroll. We are owners of Enchanted Dairy in Little Falls, Minnesota, and we're here before you tonight to seek a variance request to exceed the animal use cap to 5,040 animal units on a new green site. The history of our project proposal, you know a little bit about our request already, so we're not going to go into the details of our operation and who we are. Yeah, I'm sure you're all aware. But just to give you a little more perspective on the dairy that you might not know. April 11th, 2001, Enchanted Dairy started its parlor. Currently, we're milking almost 23 hours a day, 1,800 cows, 3X, and the parlor is showing its age, which needs to be phased out soon, and we're looking to do something before it gets to a point where it needs to be done immediately. So in October of 2024, we had the Enchanted Dairy variance request at our current site. The request was to construct a new parlor, animal housing areas, and manure storage. That request was denied. And so we, as a team, decided what are we going to do going forward. And so from October to January, we really kicked around different ideas on what to do and where to go and how we're going to tackle this. So it led us to our new site where we're proposing now, which we probably got really serious about it in late February, early March. And the variance request for a greenfield site was put in, and we think we're able to address concerns brought forward at the October variance hearing, necessary to appropriate the scope of the EAW for the future facility. Greenfield site allows for the newest industry technologies to be incorporated into the design, which is important to us, and commitment to staying local in Morrison County. We can maintain, grow, utilize the existing land baits and feed production and manure application acres that we have, and also cultivate and develop additional relationships with local producers for feed and manure application.
The reason we chose this site was due to the locality. It's accessibility. It's 3/4 miles away from State Highway 27, and the dairy will be the only building site on 195th Avenue. The proximity to Enchanted Dairy, this way we are able to utilize existing infrastructure, eliminating the redundancy that would be involved in milking at 2 locations, thus an overall smaller footprint than a multi-site. Safety-wise, it's rural and on a gravel road, not heavily traveled. All residents in the area meet the required setbacks by the county. It's agriculture zone land, and it aligns with Morrison County Land Use Ordinance and meets all the setback requirements on that. And so this is just to kind of go over the animal cap unit ordinance and why we're looking to exceed that. So we believe ordinances are important to the citizens of Morrison County, and the animal cap unit ordinance was very important in the late 90s when much of the effects of modern dairy farming were unregulated at state and national level. Most of the research cited during the 1998 rationale consisted heavily of swine-related articles and ranged from years 1975 to 1995. Since 1998 and 2008, when the animal cap unit was reviewed, numerous scientific research advancements have been made in the dairy industry in terms of animal husbandry, ventilation, sand and manure separation, herd health, and feed management. And I mean, I've seen this over my lifetime too, and even as a veterinarian, the animal husbandry has gone up and beyond. The use of technology on dairy farms improves not only the farm efficiency and the animal management, but also the environmental sustainability.
So we're here tonight because it's a multitude of phases that we're going to have to go through to get to our hopeful end goal. And I'm sure you guys are aware of these processes, but just to state them out, we had a Morrison County meeting with the DRT Development Review Team, and then we assumed from that meeting, coming out with the comment that we had, that we were okay to go ahead with the site that we proposed. And from there, we're here in front of you now, which is kind of step 1.5, but this is 1.5 of 6 processes. So after this, given we get a variance to the animal unit cap, there will be the EAW, which is Environmental Assessment Worksheet that Amy reviewed. And then there's the DNR Well Appropriations Permit, the MPCA administered National Pollution Discharge Elimination System Permit, which is livestock permit preparation. And then there's also the Morrison County Land Use Conditional Use Permit after that, and then ultimately onto the commissioners.
And so I was gonna go over the environmental review process, but Amy kind of already touched on this. But essentially, in the ordinance states there are ramifications yet to be fully understood in terms of pollution to surface water, land, and air, ecological impacts of spills, odor concerns, and various social economic problems affecting those communities. And that was Figure 3, letter D in the packet. Now we have a scientific way to evaluate just that in each proposed site, specifically with the Environmental Assessment Worksheet, or the EAW. The EAW will explore all potential environmental impacts, including but not limited to soil, water, land use, social, economic, air quality, greenhouse gas emissions, cultural and natural habitats for fish, wildlife, threatened and endangered species, plant communities, and sensitive ecological resources, among many other things. It is a lengthy and expensive process of anywhere from 10 to 24 months. There's also a public review process, and the responsible government unit, in our case, a Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, or MPCA, will review and use the criteria rule to decide if the project has the potential for significant environmental effects based off project design, site location, soil topography, and weather patterns of the area with current scientific literature. This will address the concerns listed in the rationale for the Morrison County Land Use Control Ordinance, Figure 3's letter A through J. And I also believe this would also address the concerns presented in the letters before the meeting. This extensive EAW process addresses 22 topics directly. Many concerns present in the rationale for Morrison County Land Use County Ordinance will be addressed at length. Additionally, all the concerns brought forward by members of the community are going to be addressed in future conditional use permit as well.
So this is a little bit about who the MPCA is as well. As a dairy, we're regulated by the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, which is committed to ensuring that every Minnesotan has healthy air, sustainable lands, clean water, and a better climate. Through the authority of state and federal statutes and guidelines, the state agency focuses on preventing and reducing the pollution of air, land, water, and leads Minnesota's efforts to protect against the devastating effects of climate change. They work with regulated parties, businesses, governments, organizations, Minnesota's 11 tribal nations to develop innovative, community-centered approaches to protect natural resources and improve human health and foster strong economic growth. The MPCA Livestock Division governs the collection, transportation, storage, processing, and land application of all manure on CAFOs. The rules apply to most aspects of the livestock management, including the location, design, construction, operation, management of feedlots and manure handling facilities as well. They follow the Minnesota Rules, Chapter 7020, which are written to minimize the pollution of air, land, and water. All right, this talks about land application of manure. As I just said, we're regulated by the MPCA and Minnesota 7020 rule under the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System. A permit requires a yearly manure management plan, soil samples for each field every 3 years. Agronomic rates allowed to apply is based on the specific field's soil nutrients using the University of Minnesota's recommended rates. Best management practices. strict setbacks of manure in sensitive areas adjacent to surface waters, not allowed to apply manure to frozen or snow-covered soils. This helps minimize runoff during spring and snow melt or large rain events. The applicator flow rate monitoring technology. So this is a little bit of new technology while applicating in the fields. It allows you to variable rate your manure. You can instantly change it at whatever desired rate is called for. And of course, you can apply based on each field soil test to the agronomist's recommendations. A little bit about our site. We have it engineered for 13 months of storage, planned as assurance to prevent spills. Current permitting requires 9 months, up to 14 months maximum. And the manure application can be conducted in the spring and the fall, which is actually every 6 months. So they'll be emptied out every 6 months. All right. I believe I told every one of you during the on-site visit about our manure processing solids, or a separation process that we're going to go through on our proposed dairy. It's not unconventional, but it is new technology that is being used by modern dairies of the size we're proposing to eliminate the need to pump manure long distances, hose manure long distances, or haul it long distances. Instead, you're making a product that can be, hauled off to fields that are further away that you would have less impact on local soils around the farm. So this is a solid separator and centrifuge. The product of this is a nutrient-rich organic solid. It has great reduction in odors in the liquid manure storage areas or the lagoons. The reduction of total solids and volatile solids loading to wastewater ponds as well. It gives you an ability to diversify your operations. Dairy operations can opt out to eliminate the solids separations to provide options for land application. Acres that may be infeasible to apply manure as a liquid, then you could put this on as a supplemental choice. Separated solids can be used for animal bedding, reducing the need for traditional bedding sources such as straw or corn stover. And nutrient contents. A centrifuge discharge after separated solids contains very high levels of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium.
So like we said, it's a natural organic fertilizer that we have essentially. And so it incentivizes local farmers in the area to use this natural organic fertilizer, thus decreasing the use of commercial synthetic fertilizer in the area. So that's one benefit, and it's also a cost savings to local farmers compared to the price of commercial synthetic fertilizer. It also, manure or natural organic fertilizers has shown improved soil health because of its water holding capacity compared to synthetic fertilizer with no organic matter. And healthy soils can store more carbon, further contributing to climate change mitigation with this. And then also due to the demands of the dairy, it will promote crop diversification in Morrison County compared to the typical cash crop in the area. And this will help both the environment and wildlife. For example, alfalfa helps with erosion control and nitrogen loss in the soil. It will be a local source for farmers to sell their crops, giving incentive to haul only a few miles opposed to the longer trip to the end user elsewhere. The seller also captures the benefit of having reduced hauling time waiting in line, and no deduct for local promotions or the damaged grind or fines. And so this on the right is the additional feed requirements beyond what we can produce. So this is what we'd be buying from local farmers.
All right, for odor mitigation strategies, there's been a lot of advances made in the dairy facility designs. Newer barns have prioritized good air quality as essential to maintain healthy cows and worker health in the livestock barns. Also, the newer manure sand separating methods, odors have been significantly reduced. This is largely due to the manure pit design and utilizing modern technology like manure solid separators in combination with a centrifuge, which gives you a dry product with less odor due to the sorting of fines out of the effluent. On this slide, we have checkmarked 3 of the options that you can do to mitigate odor. As you see on there, there's ways of further doing it.
Yeah, so there's newer sand processing and reclamation strategies that will significantly help do it. Reducing volatile solids loading to waste storage ponds, and also mechanical ventilation of the animal housing areas.
All right. We have been in search of studies that show that the local impact to a dairy farm has little or actually neutral to beneficial values on land. There's a study in 2023 that was published from southern Minnesota, including 2,795 observations in Blue Earth, Jackson, and Freeborn counties from 2017 to 2020. And it stated in the observation that the homes located between 1/2 of a mile to 1 mile away from swine feedlots were associated with an increase in value, and whereas the distance of less than 1/2 a mile away was not found to have an effect.
And then just to go over some of the benefits to Morrison County, it's really keeping the dairy alive and thriving in Morrison County, keeping the dairy industry alive and thriving. We promote crop diversification, thus supporting wildlife habitat and providing erosion control. We are bringing a local natural organic fertilizer to the area, a local source for farmers to sell their crops. This new site will have less water usage due to the efficiencies in a new dairy and recycling and reusing of water. There's also job creation and spending at local stores and restaurants. And then, as we proposed the first time, we're going to keep the educational viewing area so residents and local schools can come and learn about the dairy industry, since we're passionate about educating as well.
Again, this is just the permitting process slide that you saw earlier, just to remind the public and the board of how many step process this is and the stringent, yeah, you got it.
And so we just want to thank you for your consideration. Morrison County has a commitment to agriculture and wants to see the success of the industry as a way to benefit the citizens in a way that is both feasible and sustainable. We take a lot of pride in our work, and we are passionate stewards of the animals, land, and environment. The beauty of the dairy industry is that we reuse, recycle, and upcycle continuously. Our dairy requires a diversity of crops such as grass, alfalfa, corn, and soybeans, which promotes diversification of the typical cash crops in the area, thus supporting wildlife habitation. Alfalfa and grass also helps control soil erosion. These inedible crops are fed to the cows, which are able to utilize the nutrients to create an edible, nutrient-dense product, milk, and essentially beef, for the citizens of Morrison County. In addition, they create a natural fertilizer which can be used to replenish the soil nutrients to grow a crop, leading to a reduction in synthetic commercial fertilizers. Our nutrient incorporation from manure is highly scientific, as we are taking soil samples and only applying at the rate that is required of the soil in that area.
We are highly regulated by the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. Our National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, the NPDES permit, United States Department of Agriculture, Minnesota Department of Agriculture. It is not the intention of us to disregard any of the county residents or citizens or stakeholders in the county. The request for the variance is to allow us to appropriately scope an EAW, Environmental Assessment Worksheet. Once the allowable scope is determined, the EAW is completed. The findings of the EAW will address the concerns and satisfy all regulatory compliance requirements for a livestock facility of the proposed size and the proposed location. By completing the EAW, it is expected that the findings will show that the proposed location and land associated with the proposed facility, manure application sites, is suitable to accommodate the facility of the proposed size, and when considering possible impact, including but not limited to the soil, water, surface water, groundwater, wastewater, stormwater, and wetlands, land use, socioeconomic, air quality, greenhouse gas emissions, cultural and natural habitats, which is fish, wildlife, threatened and endangered species, plant communities, and sensitive ecological resources, among many other things.
Given how important the dairy is to the American diet, producing dairy has a surprisingly small impact on the environment and numerous benefits to the local, state, and national level. There's nothing we want more than to contribute to a healthier environment for future generations. As dairy farmers, we rely on a healthy water, land, and ecological system to be able to feed the cows who in turn feed us.
Thank you.
Thank you. And appreciate all the time and energy and effort that obviously went into the application, so. I'm going to open it up now to the board members at this time, after the staff report and after the applicant's presentation here. What questions, comments are up to discuss?
Mr. Chair?
Clint?
I have one question. I'm gonna hold most of my stuff until after I hear the public, but one question maybe for the applicants is, when we were out there on a site visit, who owns that property to the northeast, that building site? I believe it's on your land. You guys own that? Do you rent it out? Could you
Yes.
tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we purchased the property and we do own that residence. It is mine.
So is that continue? You gonna do anything with that as far as animals or stuff?
No.
Tractor storage, feed storage, anything like that?
No, in fact, there will be no feed storage on this site. And as far as the house goes, we're considering moving it off the property.
Okay, thank you. I'll wait until after public comment,
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Marv?
Mr. Chair,
Marv?
you look like you assigned me before I even asked, but that's all right.
I knew what's coming.
So I'm trying to grasp and handle this in a manner that I hope all can. I first asked individuals, and we have a note of it, why we had animal units put in place, because I understand a lot of counties don't have it put in place. And I just highlighted a few things here. If people didn't read through it, and I won't spend a lot of time doing this because we won't want to go on, we spend a lot of time. But what I'm seeing here, the ordinance preserves, promotes, and protects good use, or good land use, health and safety, order and convenience, and general welfare of inhabitants of Morrison County. And then here, the next couple things was put like limiting the number of animal units of any feedlot ensures that the future there will be land available for proper land application to manure and promote and protect public health, safety, and welfare, and providing economic opportunities in the future for minimizing potential environmental pollution. And I believe Jake and Brooke addressed a bunch of this, and that should be, also thought about. But now I'm looking at it is, okay, the next thing, why and how did we get from the 1,500 animal units to 2008? And I asked Amy for some information, but I don't think, Amy, do you have anything from minutes or anything to constructively say why and how we got to that level?
Mr. Chair, when the 1,500 animal unit cap was put on, that was a very concerted effort. We were just looking at feedlots. Until 2008, we rewrote the entire land use control ordinance. And so that was a much bigger project that rewrote all sorts of things. So the concentration of that, the animal unit cap wasn't necessarily the biggest focus at that time. We did do some research to find any, because like I said, that was such a large project, rewriting that entire ordinance. We did do some research to see if we could find anything that addressed that specifically, and we were unable to find any notes. Not to say that it wasn't discussed in any stakeholder meetings or anything like that. It just wasn't part of the meeting minutes or the record when the full document went for adoption.
Okay, so another thing I asked for, and I had a conversation this afternoon from Shannon Westine from Soil and Water, and she said she wasn't going to be able to attend here. But anyhow, she had said they were in the process to trying to bring some of this information forward. And what I had asked is, what has changed since 2008? Have our nitrate levels, have they increased? Have they went down? Have our phosphorus levels stayed in check? Have they raised or went up or down? And I know some of your soil analysis, well, you can use that towards that, but them are pieces that she said we tried to get this together. We didn't have enough time to do it, unless, Amy, you had a bit of that?
Mr. Chair, I did receive an email with the map from, let me find it here. They did give me a map of the it was the well data set map that they had produced in 2017. But actually, this is from the Department of Agriculture. We got ourselves on the map with the Department of Agriculture because we were finding very high nitrates in some areas of the county in drinking water and well samples. And so the Department of Agriculture launched a more in-depth study. So here is a map to just kind of show you the nitrate situation, I guess, in the different areas of the county. 10 or more, 10 parts per million or more is considered, it's over the safe drinking level standard. So you can see we do have a few townships that have that. So that was the information that they had sent me, and that's kind of aggregated information for the county and then some of those areas of concern within Morrison County.
So would the EEW address that if there would be overly high levels of that? Or what would happen to that?
Well, the EAW will certainly address groundwater and groundwater conditions. And I would, and then also in the distribution, when you put together an EAW, there is a extremely long list of agencies that you must provide that to. And I would be very surprised if the Department of Agriculture does not provide comment on the nitrate concerns or issues that we have here. And then also, yes, I mean, that's certainly going to address the groundwater, and this is definitely something that floats to the top in Morrison County.
Yeah, so, I'm looking at, okay, we went from 15 to 25, and if we seen a spike after it, and the soils on general in Morrison County are more of a sandy soil, and everyone is actually different, but, here, I'm concerned about that. I'm sure as I was brought to my attention, others that are very concerned about it. But then a lot of this is going to be brought up in the CUP if it gets to that process. But I mean, this is part of we have an ordinance here. In this ordinance, you're asking to vary from this ordinance. In order to vary, we have to understand the ordinance, in my opinion, in this ordinance applied, or can we vary from it? That's where I'm coming from on this. And if it shows we have good evidence, everything can support it, we have to support this. That's where I'm coming from on that. And do we have enough information? Do we have enough information to make a good decision tonight with that. And when I was talking to Shannon about that, she said, if you don't feel you have enough information, good information, maybe you should ask for a continuance. So I'm just throwing that out here. It's early in the game here. We have a lot of things to hear out, but I'm just bringing that to my attention at that time, this time. So at that time, this is all I have to say. So thank you.
Thank you, Marv.
I'll just wait for the people to make their comments.
I have one note before folks get going here, and Marv, you kind of hit it on the head here, and this is understanding the ordinance and the evidence. And when you look at where this went in 2008 or 1998 and where, I mean, the applicant had it in his presentation in regards to how old the research articles were when considering this. And then when you go through the actual rationale for this, there's no numbers in any way, shape, or form that associate to any purpose, reason, anything else. And then when you go through it, phrases like have the potential, is achieved primarily, may also pose, yet to be fully understood, the potential for, or likelihood, all these phrases that say we did these studies and we went through all of this stuff, and then at the end of it, it says the above represent concrete reasons by the Board of Commissioners for Morrison County. And no numbers, 40-year-old articles, nothing actually concrete in any of the evidence. So I'm trying to figure out where the animal cap actually came from. Like, it started 1500 in 1998. It went to 1,000 10 years later with nothing, and then now we're asking to go above it again, and I'm looking forward to hearing from everybody in the audience here, but at the same point in time, we have to look at what you just said, the facts, what's in place, what did we use for information to make these decisions earlier, and then we get to vote. So this time I'm going to open this up to the public. Anybody wishing to speak to this application, please go to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and your facts. If we do get comments that get lengthy, obviously there's a lot of people. I don't know how many comments there are, but I might have to throw the timer on. I'm going to use my own judgment for that because I'm allowed to. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Larry Corp from Genola. I'll make this brief, but after listening to all this and putting input into it, I really believe that in order to make a decision of this magnitude from this governing body, you need to have a broader reach and an impact study on what this has going to do to the area. You brought up a very good point. I want to reemphasize it. 1998, the cap was set. 2008, it went up by 1,000 to 2,500. We're looking now to more double it again, or 3.5 times the original one, which had sketchy at best data. Now we want to go up 3.5 times with no data, no science. You're going to ask for trouble, environmental trouble, economic trouble, and legal trouble. End of comment.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Okay.
My name is Dave Zimmerman, and I'm from Flensburg. And I put together that information paper. I've got a couple copies here if anybody would like to follow along. They're there. But a lot of the stuff that we're talking, and a lot of the stuff that Mr. Treadle said is stuff that I question myself. And my background is I was in the military for years. A lot of my expertise and attention in the military involved with relief from responsibility for property losses. You'll be able to see a little bit of that input in this documentation. Now, going back, and again, just throwing something out, if there is some contamination or a problem on the land, not necessarily the Carroll's land, but neighboring areas where people allow them to put manure on it, and it contaminates something, who is responsible for the fines and the stuff based on the PCA's evaluation? I mean, there's some liability issues there. And to disregard them is, I mean, you got to address it. The other thing, as far as the county employees, I mean, if you make a decision here that is not prudent, or, you know, if you say, well, yeah, we're going to increase that cap without having some documentation that's at least an indication that you can document the effect it has. I mean, I don't know if you've got any data from 98 to currently as far as the increases in how it impacted on the land that we're talking about. Furthermore, I mean, and one of the comments that I missed putting in here is that if you look at the geological characteristics of Morrison County, I don't know that they're compatible with the mission or the goal of keeping a dairy of this size in Morrison County. And what I mean is there are counties that don't have a cap. Their soils are different. There's a reason that they don't have to have a cap. There's a reason that cap was established here. If you look at the contaminated wells and stuff that are documented in the county, I mean, you've got a lot of reasons there to question what's going on here as far as approving the additional livestock in the operations. There's a lot of other issues. I mean, you look at the environmental or business development. I mean, you look on the internet and see what Walmart's doing in the dairy industry. You know, they built a dairy in Indiana. They have one in Georgia. They're opening one up in the panhandle of Texas. I mean, the effect that that's going to have on the industry, I mean, you've got to take that into consideration as we're weighing the benefits of expanding that cap. Now, there's many other things that are similar to this and also important, but this is just a few of the items that would justify questioning whether we should adjust that cap. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for your service. Any public comment?
Mr. Chairman, my name is Doug Wagner. I'm a landowner straight across to the west of the proposed site. We own 160 acres there. I guess I'm going to start my first comment is, seems like Jake contacted everybody except the neighbors involved. That's my first comment. My second one is I talked with Colette Meyer. She's the Morrison County feedlot manager. And Mr. Chairman, if I could have Amy verify this, right now there's 40 four-tier dairy facilities currently in Morrison County, correct?
Mr. Chair,
Amy?
I don't have that data in front of me.
Okay, that is what she responded back to me this afternoon. There's 40 dairies at the Tier 4. There's 2 hog facilities at the Tier 4, 0 chicken facilities at the Tier 4, and 1 turkey facility up in Motley at the Tier 4. Next question is, Mr. Chairman, has the dairy ever experienced any spills, recordable spills, anything? And that is, when you're Tier 4, it's considered hazardous waste. Am I not correct, Amy?
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
Do you want to do you want me just to take notes and then I'll circle back on all of
Please.
these?
Yep.
Okay.
because I do have a lot of questions and stuff, so I had a good,
You keep asking them and we'll write them down and then we'll have to address them, just to follow the procedure.
yep. Nope, I had a good conversation. I talked with Jake this afternoon for about a half hour and stuff. He answered a lot of my questions, but being close proximity, I have a lot more. And I guess if I would like to comment after you write the questions down, if that can be opened back up to the
It won't be
public.
open back up.
Okay.
We take the input, we digest, we go back through the finding of fact criteria and then answer what we can and how we can.
Okay, I guess I'd like to have Jake talk, when I asked Jake this afternoon, Mr. Chairman, why they could not build it closer to their facility, he talked about the spec program. I would like Jake to,
The what program?
I guess it's through the county, is it called, is that correct, Jake? It's called spec? Where,
Hold on. Just, if you have it, then say it back to me and that's.
okay,
Yep.
Mr.
Yep,
Chairman,
thanks.
could he explain to all of us here what the spec program is?
Okay,
And I guess Mr. Chairman, I believe our Township Supervisor, Mr. Sandy, just a couple of years ago, we had a rain event. The culvert on the south side of 133rd, where the culvert could not keep up. George, I believe Mr. Chairman, George put flags or a barricade up there. Is that correct?
Yep, let's go.
I can talk?
Yes.
Yes, that is correct. I barricaded at the corner of 195th Avenue on 133rd Street, and the water was running over the road at Rice Creek and to the east of Rice Creek about 300 feet.
Okay.
And that it happens fairly often.
Okay. And that was one of my next questions, Mr. Chairman. What's going to divert that water from coming off from the north and through these wetlands through that, on a rain event like that? That is it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
I'm Susan Peterson. I'm the owner of the farm directly across the road from the property that is asking for the variance, and I'm asking for a no vote for this proposal. When I first saw this property over 50 years... Yep. When I first saw this property over 50 years ago, I knew I would someday live there. My husband and I were deeded the property in July of 2001. It was our dream to build a home and retire there. My husband Gary died in May of 2019, so my plans have changed. His uncle, Edward Peterson, lived on this farm his entire life. He died in 2022. My daughter, a veteran of the Navy, also has a dream to retire there with her husband, who is currently enlisted in the Navy with 20-plus years of service. They plan on building and maintaining a small farm on this property in approximately 5 years after their retirements. I will also live there with them. This farm has been in the Peterson family since 1910. It will not be a big business, but it will still be a family farm. This is not vacant land. It is just waiting for its family to build again. If this variance is allowed, it would change the dreams of my family. I'm concerned about the environmental impact this dairy business would have on my property. What will it do to the water table and the condition? And the neighboring wetlands. A large cattle dairy business would bring much more traffic, noise around the clock, insects, vermin, and odor right across the road, which is in a home that would be less than a half a mile from where the barns would be. Are there not other properties that are also suited to this business venture closer to their own family properties and homes? In my 50 years of visiting the farm, I have also seen water across the road on the 133rd Street. I'm asking that you consider voting no on this proposal. Mr. Chairman, I also have a letter from my daughter who was not able to attend. She is employed by the Navy and her husband is enlisted in the Navy, and they were not able to receive any leave. Can I read her letter?
Please.
Dear sirs, I am writing regarding the variance request submitted by Jacob and Brooke Carroll. My family has owned the property across from the proposed site since 1910. I have a deep love and appreciation for this land. One of my earliest childhood memories is of farm, a family reunion with faces I do not remember, but the land I do. I joined the Navy, just like my great-uncle Edward Peterson, who lived at the farm until his death in 2022. In 2004, I had met my husband, a city boy from San Antonio, who has also fallen in love with Minnesota and the farm. After a 20-year career with multiple sea and combat deployments as hospital corpsman, we made the decision 2 years ago to retire to Little Falls after our daughter graduates from college, where she is studying aviation science at a small college in Illinois. Over the years, we have tried to learn as much as we can about homesteading and farming practices. We currently live on a 3-acre property near our current duty station of Great Lakes, Illinois, where we have a large garden, chickens, ducks, and bees. Our dream is to build upon these skills in Little Falls, to live as my family has for 115 years. I have concerns that the requested variance would impact not only our dreams, but would also impact the neighboring farms. I am a nurse with a master's degree in public health. As such, I'm extremely concerned with the health impacts to the groundwater and environmental impacts that a larger scale operation would have on the community at large. Practices as those being requested host a myriad of local environmental harms. The storage of liquid manure in manure lagoons pollutes the air and water of surrounding communities. An inherently unsustainable manure storage system is only and further entrenched by the adoption of, and I don't know how to say this right, anaerobic digesters. Have environmental and health impact studies been completed, particularly by independent agencies who are not insensitized by this expansion? Furthermore, inclusion of these practices will further consolidate the agricultural sector by rewarding the largest farms and incentivizing farmers to increase herd size in order to generate more manure. Small farms already struggle to get funding from oversubscribed conservation programs, and this decision will make more conservation funding flow only to the largest farms. I ask that thoughtful consideration be given to this variance for the sake of the community and my family. Respectfully, Rusty and Elizabeth Baker. And their address, if you need it, is 1606 Providence Drive, McHenry, Illinois. And I don't think I gave my address. My address is from Elk River, and I'm 21408 Concord Street.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Any public comment?
Hi there, I'm Mike Kleiber. I'm 17446 Highway 27, if you want the address. Longtime neighbor of the Millers. Go back 40 years farming here. I farm close to 500 acres. I raise beans, corn, alfalfa. In the last few years, I've been selling it to the Miller family and now the Carroll family. And I find that they've been excellent economic boon for the area of the farmers here. It saves us a lot of time and effort and transportation costs. We also purchase manure from them. Like I said, I run close to 500 acres, and it's very valuable. And I'd like to comment that they do an excellent job, them and their manure distributors, to put it out there. And like I said, my land borders the Millers, and we've bordered each other for 40 years, and different tracts of land all over the place. And I've never seen a bad incident yet. And I would be the first. I'm an ex-chairman of Ducks Unlimited, so I really value our wildlife. And they do an excellent job. And I'd also like to say, with the new facility going up, and you have the newest technology, which is always the best thing to have. And one other thing, it is zoned agricultural. And I am a family farmer, and I've been farming since I've been 18 years old, and the family's been there since 1940. You have a nice young couple here with young children of their own. They pay taxes, and the guys that are actually farming out there pay plenty of taxes. Just got my statements for the property taxes. So I'd just like to encourage you to vote for this, because they are a very good economic boon to the area, and like I said, it's an agricultural area. There's a reason why they have cities, and that's where I think a lot of people that want to move out to the country. My father had problems with this years ago, spread manure. People don't like the smell of it. Well, guess what? That milk and that food tastes pretty darn good. And if you don't, you know, you want trying to move the farmers off the land, where are you going to put them? I don't think you'll want them in town. So I think that you really should consider this, because we need farmers, and this is the way the future is. I was also Farmers Union, president of Morrison County Farmers Union for 20 years, and I'm presently the vice president. I can't speak for the organization because I didn't have a meeting about it. But all I can tell you is these folks have done an excellent job, and I've been right there next to them. Like I said, our land borders all over the place. And Ron has done an excellent job. Ron and Marv have done an excellent job. And now Brooke and Jake are doing a very good job, and I'm quite pleased with it. And like I said, I have my foot right next to their ground, spring and fall. So like I said, once again, I encourage you that I'm pro this expansion, and that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
My name is Jim Nelson, and I'm from Little Falls here. And just a little bit of background. I worked for 48 years in the farm cooperative system. The last 24 years, I've actually worked on the financial side, working with cooperatives mostly in central Minnesota, really the upper 2/3 of the state. My reasoning for just saying a few words here is I've grown up around the dairy industry. I'm the old guy here, and I grew up standing in cow manure, and I wished I could have been able to farm, but I couldn't. My comments are that I watched and saw the devastating impact of the dairy industry leaving the central Minnesota communities, and they've left along with the dairy herds, which really was the cause of it. Now, back in 1998, approximately, I was involved with a little bit, but that large 500 cow dairy that was initially built in that Foley area, that was kind of the start of it here in the system. And since then, we watched it, and we saw where 60 cow herds in the beginning when I used to make farm calls as a young guy starting in the Lastrup area. And then they went to 100 cow herds to be efficient. Then it was 200 and 300 cow herds. And now we see a lot of 5,000 and 10,000 cow herds. And what I do reference on that is Riverview Dairy, that's in the Benson area. And they started building the 5,000 cow herds down there. And in the process, they went along with it, and it's one after another after another. And the dairy industry has moved that way because they're cost effective and they're efficient. Now, what they're building down there is not 5s, they're building 10s. And that's been the direction of the industry. Where I'm at here is I think you have some things here. When I look at it, this area here, we used to call it the milk trough that ran through Wisconsin, kind of followed the interstate up toward Fargo, and was in central Minnesota. That milk trough has been split up. You look at Douglas County, I think in 21, there was only about 37 herds left, and now it's decreased substantially. What's left is a nice element that's right here along Highway 25 towards St. Cloud area that the dairy industry has flourished. And it's been good for the local communities. It's been good for the ag co-ops that have been involved. What you have here, and it's just such a bright spot, you have highly productive land that can produce corn. You have water. source that's here is very high quality, and other places we go, further south, they can't pass drug tests. I guess I'll just finish by saying that these larger dairies help the smaller dairies. And what I'm trying to get at is I'm aware of 3 large feed production facilities that produce animal feed that are close to this area. And their volume and their efficiency has been dependent partially upon these large dairies. It's kept them going and they're growing. What happens as a result of it, and I'll end my comments, is that as a result of it, the products produced, the feed products produced, they're produced at low enough cost where it's maybe that's a signal here a little bit too, but I'll just finish up by saying that the large dairies in combination with the smaller dairies gets worked out very well because feed production facilities, which feed costs, and I know the people involved here with the dairy here realize this, but a huge part of the being able to cash flow an operation on the dairy farm is keeping your feed costs down. And these feed production systems where they have large dairies involved, and that's been an advantage for this area, has kept the cost, overall cost of the feed product lines down, which helps all of the dairies, not just the large dairies. So I'll just end by saying I hope if something happens here that you move ahead here. The new norm today is 5 and 10,000 cow dairies. So please consider updating your regulations. Thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Any public comment? Any more public comment?
Can I just make a couple more after?
Give you 2 minutes.
I just want to say that, there's a lot of opinions going out here. There's a lot of opinions that are being expressed here. But again, to make the decisions that we're making without having data to support those decisions is irresponsible, okay? Now, the comments are there. I did some research. Walmart has 3 dairies. They've got them in Indiana, Texas, and Georgia, I think. They're selling extended shelf life milk, which will stay on the shelf without refrigeration for 2 or 3 months.
1 more minute, sir.
Okay, now where I'm getting at is that there's a lot of speculation out there. But if you're going to make a decision, you need facts, written down, documented stuff to make a decision as big as you're making tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Any public comment?
Howdy, Jesse Young, 15234 Game Farm Road. I would like to say, I guess, kind of going off that, it seems like you're asking for information that they need to provide in the next step right now, which is kind of, it just seems a little confusing, and so I would state that I think you should allow them to go forward to this next step so you can possibly answer a lot of the questions that people are having with the problems of a lot of the things with the, environmental concerns, caps and all that. I get the concerns, but it seems like they need to be able to go forward to the next step to even answer any of your guys' questions. So it seems a little bit, it seems like we're asking kind of 2 different things. We want some of the information before we have it, and then we're saying that you need to, go through this process to show us all these things. So you know what I mean? I guess it's kind of a little bit confusing that some of this information you're kind of wanting to have before, but the next step is basically to provide that information. So I would say, I'm hoping that you can approve it and they can provide this information, go through the process, so, you know, everybody can kind of get more informed on what's gonna go on. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Jerry Palo. I am a neighbor directly to the north of this proposed project. Actually, a couple people have said what I'm going to say, but I just feel it's important that I say it. I taught chemistry over in Piers for 33 years. I tested over 400 wells for nitrates. Do I have a concern about this project? I don't, and the reason why is because of my history with the Miller family. I got to know them back in 2003 when Ken was finishing his transition over to Ron and Marv of the farm, and I sat for many hours with Ken talking about the olden days. Ron and Marv, as Mike mentioned, have been fantastic. They've rented my property for many years. I find them very trustworthy, friendly, and doing very good environmental practices. Jake happens to be, his family comes from Marshall and happens to be friends with my brother-in-law, and I've heard all kinds of good stories about the Carroll family. And when I brought my 90-year-old grandmother over to Enchanted Dairy, as well as my little 2- and 4-year-old grandsons, Brooke gave us a fantastic tour and made sure that she took pictures of everybody. So when she says that she's interested in an educational facet, I believe that. I just want to close by saying that these concerns about nitrates and whatever, as Jesse said, I think they're going to be addressed during the next process. If you approve this, and I would encourage you to do so that we can move forward and find out what's going on. And I say all this because I trust this family.
Thank you, sir. Any public comment?
Good evening. My name is Dave Stish, 7408 Imperial Road, Royalton. And I'm here just to address the process because I don't think it's clear to everybody here in the room. Many of us are very familiar with it because we've been here before. Farmers and board members obviously are. This is the Board of Adjustment. They also wear another hat, which is the Planning Commission. Board of Adjustment is responsible for variances. Variances are just a deviation from ordinance, a proposal to be closer to a setback, closer to a neighbor's property, closer to a shoreline, typically, or build a bigger building than is allowed on a specific property. Those are the usual requests. Septic tank or septic system in a right-of-way, stuff like that. I believe this might be the first animal unit cap that has ever been before them. And 2 years ago, 22, somewhere in that range, this same board with their different hat on as Planning Commission reviewed ag ordinances in pretty good detail and made several recommendations to the commissioners. Again, variance, the Board of Adjustment, their decision on variances is final, but their decisions as a Planning Commission are just recommendations to the commissioners. In that case, the commissioners did not follow their recommendation to lift the animal unit cap, but left it at 2,500 and basically said, let the variance process be part of it. First step would be a variance, second step would be a conditional use permit. Now, both of these involve public hearings. It's very nice that so many people are at a public hearing. This doesn't happen very often. Most times, there's 2 or 3 neighbors in the audience that are concerned about for or against what their neighbor might be doing for variances. Same thing with the Planning Commission and CUPs, zoning changes, ordinance changes, things like that. Not a lot of public, unless it's a hot item, like this kind of is. Now, many of you mentioned that there's no science involved in this animal unit cap. I'd have to agree. All the science is required in the next process, as several have pointed out. And that is the conditional use permit process, which is the same board, different hat, different responsibilities. They would review all of the applicants' detailed application and make a recommendation to the commissioners. Again, a public hearing would take place, and you have input again for that, and you would have the science then. So this is probably why there's only, I believe, 4 counties in the whole state that have an animal unit cap, because the process that provides all of the concrete, scientific information is in the CUP process, the conditional use permit process. And if I'm not adequately conveying this information, John, perhaps you or Amy could correct me where I've, or fill in the blanks that I've missed. So if you really want to know if this fits, and if it is environmentally correct, and if it, how it affects the whole neighborhood, this Board of Adjustment should pass this tonight, and then go on to the next step of the process, which is, there's a public announcement in the Morrison County Record as to what's happening. There will be letters sent out to neighbors again, the same neighbors that received them this time, possibly more. And you will have the huge list that you saw Jake give to you tonight. I think there's 10 things on that list that they have to do, check off, and have detailed information on at that hearing. So that would be provided to you. So I encourage you to pass tonight, and understanding that there will be another public hearing with the whole CUP process and all of these studies available to you at that time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Myron Check, 12662 125th Street, Little Falls. As a fellow dairy producer in Morrison County, it's kind of come up like maybe why dairy in this area. So I'll tell you exactly how I look at it. I look at this part in Minnesota, especially centered around Stearns County, is kind of the hub and has historically been that for about 100 years or more. In the counties that surround Stearns County, which is maybe Todd, Morrison, Benton, and so forth, mostly all cattle, their terminal end is in Long Prairie. If you buy veterinary services or supply services, Stearns County, Melrose, Sauk Center are key towns if you're a dairy producer. So you take the counties surrounding that area, which we're in, make it the prime hub for the future growth of the dairy industry, in my opinion. That's why we're in this area and plan to stay here. And I'd like to second what some of the people previous to me said about the variance process. Through my farming career, I've watched the animal cap come into existence at 1,500, then go to 2,500, and it was always based on no science of any kind that I'm aware of. Just an arbitrary number. And I think what might have been driving that number is at the time they picked a number that nobody really was at. And they thought if we pick 1,500 in 1997 or 98, nobody's there, we won't have to worry about it. But technology's taken us a lot further than that, as we can see. So what I would recommend here is to approve the variance and take it to a CUP and hash out all the little details that need to be discussed and move it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, Dwayne Kroll, Royalton. Yeah, we're looking at a variance here just on animals. We're not talking about all these other things. A lot of emotion, a lot of fear. I'll talk about a little bit my situation. 10, 15 years ago, there was an application for a barn that was going to be built about 1,000 feet from my farm. A lot of neighbors talked to me. Town board talked to me, go, you know, are you concerned about this? Do you want us to speak against this? And I'm going, well, this is an agricultural area, and change is going to happen. I was a hog farmer. I am not today, but I have to accept the fact that things are going to happen, and some of them I may not be used to, and I may have some fear. Well, had that hog barn next to me for 10, 15 years now. I don't even know. I don't even really know that it's there. They're managed. The management of new technology in barns is so dramatically different than what it used to be. I hear arguments about, you know, the manure and where it's going. Does it really matter if you've got 5,000 cows in one spot or if you got 2,500 in one and 2,500 across the road? You still got the same amount of cows, same amount of manure. So I would encourage you to consider this variance. I don't hear a good argument as to why this causes a problem to change. Change happens. I would look at a situation maybe like, we're going to limit the size of tractors to 100 horse. And you have a guy that goes, well, I got all this land to do. We're going to put 5 tractors out on that field because we can only have 100 horse tractors. Okay, you got 5 tractors out there. You got more inefficiency. You're actually burning more fuel. You're not achieving anything. Why not just put the 500 horse tractor out there and get it done? And, you know, my father grew up in a time when he was farming with horses, and he ended up in a quad track. And I always ask him, do you ever imagine the day that this would happen, where you're not driving and you're covering 20, 30 acres an hour? He goes, no, could have never imagined something like this. I think you have to have an appreciation of how technology has changed the animal industry and how things can be managed so much better. And like some of the speakers, and I appreciate what Dave was saying about these processes will be addressed, you know, these concerns will be addressed in the process that's coming. Today it's all about, is there a problem? Is this significantly going to affect anything if we have a facility that's significantly larger than what we've had before? It's new, it's a change, there's going to be fear. But I don't think that it's an unreasonable idea to look at having those animals concentrated versus having them spread out into, you know, more barns, more locations. So I hope you will consider their request. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Eugene Young, 14552 Game Farm Road. I'm adjacent to these people right across the road. Highway 27 separates the 2 pieces of property that be on this property south to me. And I built a new home last fall, and I have my water source is of sand point 17 feet with 9 foot of water in it, and I do not have any problems. When you talk about the cap, we updated the comprehensive plan, and you got to go back when you look at it in the 90s. In this county, most of the dairy herds were 64 cows in a ma and pa operation. And boy, you're going to have to really look around to find a 64 cow herd here today. And I would encourage you to pass this here thing, because all these issues that everybody's dragging up will be addressed later on, and the hour is getting late, and so I think I'm going to cut my time short. I think enough has been said. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, Chair. My name is Jim Sulphur. I work for the University of Minnesota Extension Service. My office is 72295 273rd Street, Dassel. My office is in St. Cloud, and I cover the whole state. And I'll try to spend a lot of discussion, rightfully so, about the environmental impact potentially of this. And there actually is some research. A number of years ago, this issue comes up pretty often in the world I run in. So I'll quote, maybe this will just settle some of the people down. There's actually 16 trials that were summarized out of the University of Nebraska, published, and 4 of those were from Minnesota. They were done at Morris. And this was a number of years ago, and what they did is they had strips, put fertilizer on, had strips, put manure on, and compared different things. And the nutrient runoff from the manure was reduced 2 to 62% relative to the fertilizer. And also soil loss was reduced 15 to 65%. And they equated that, this was a summary of the trials, and they equated to that to increased organic matter. So I looked a little bit more, and there's actually some data from, it's Idaho, so it's not local here, but they looked at applying manure to soil, and it increased the organic matter 0.02% for every ton of manure. And so it increased the organic matter of the soil, and I think that's what they think. It increases the tilth of the soil, the water runs in better. Just one of the comments. The other thing, I think we often think about that livestock herd an area, but really, and somebody addressed this already, you get a lot more crop diversity. You know, something is going to be planted on that land, and likely if there's not livestock, it's going to be corn and soybeans. Well, we put alfalfa in the rotation, we put small grain in the rotation, and that really does improve the tilth of the crop. That's why all of those are being used for cover crops now. I mean, that only logically makes sense. Just a couple of other comments. They're reinvesting in facilities. That needs to be done. I know your goal isn't to talk about economics, but just a couple of things. I actually found this data last night. Morrison County right now is 118 dairy herds, 27,000 cows. This was, I think, December 2024. They actually ranked 94th of all the counties in the United States, 3,000 counties. But I think Myron did a really nice job of addressing this. I've been in this position 30 years. There's a county, sort of northwest Minnesota, a great big county that used to be the #2 dairy county in the state, and they just did not allow dairy farms to expand. They absolutely would not. Now you go up there, I know some dairy farms, they can't get a nutritionist, they can't get a veterinarian, they're not in the top 10 anymore. And so I think we don't appreciate what we have. And just a story, about 20 years ago or so, the Stearns County Commissioners charged us, a Dairy Advisory Committee, and Extension, and the Economic Development person in the county to develop ordinances that were farmer friendly, dairy farm friendly. At that time, Stearns County was losing a lot of farms, they still are. And we went after one of the meetings, I actually went out for a beer with the guy that was the county commissioner. He was really for this. He was so excited about this. And he said, are you for this because you're hired, or do you really believe this? I'll never forget this. He said, no, Jim, I have people come to my office all the time that want to bring businesses to my county. He said they ask for tax increment financing, they ask for the sun, the moon, and the stars. And he said, you know what? They'll sell me out for $1. He said, grow your homegrown businesses. He said, we got dairy here, we got infrastructure here, we got processing plants here. He said, no, I'm excited about growing the dairy industry. And that was his take, is grow your homegrown businesses. Those people are committed to your county. And I'll never forget that. And I know economics isn't what you do, but I think that's really important to think about as you move forward with this process. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Any public comment?
Mr. Chair, good evening. My name is Ron Miller. My address is 12796 160th Avenue. And, you know, there's a lot of things that have been brought up this evening, and I appreciate all your folks' comments because they're concerns and change is scary. But the only thing constant is change. And my dad's dairy was, started out with 7 cows. And we expanded. And then Marv and myself, we moved to the 1,500 cows. And now the next generation want to move on. It's not their dad's dairy anymore, it's their dairy. The animal unit cap is, you're right, there's no science behind it. The MPCA matches your number of animals to your nutrient management plan, and they actually take a look, and a lot of counties in the state are limited by MPCA by the rules and stuff that they have to follow. Where an animal unit cap is, it's just put out there. It's, and there's science to it a little bit maybe that, it has to have so many acres to handle this much manure produced by that number of animals and stuff. That is true, but MPCA is regulating that, and if you have over 1,000 animal units, you're regulated by the MPCA permit. And part of that permit is you're reporting annually. On the farm, when I was there, we had like about 4 inspections a year. We had MPCA inspection. We had the Food and Drug Administration. They wanted to make sure that our milk passed and we met all of the criteria for safe milk. We had federal inspection because of interstate commerce. We had also OSHA because we have employees. So, we have a lot of inspections and people concerned about safety, and we're all about sustainability and being environmentally friendly. We need to have our environment safe for the next generation, and we want to be environmentally friendly. The size and the design of these dairies, the efficiency they're at now with controlling odor, runoff, and all of the other concerns, it's being addressed in the design of the facility, and the folks that are hired to do the environmental studies and design the engineering of the pit, the barn, how to mitigate any potential pollutant. So, a lot of those questions, and I know that one of the neighbors had a question about manure spills, and we did have a hose break, and we had to clean it up, and it was reported that the hose had broke and that we did clean it up. And you could go back in our MPCA report, because anytime anything happens like that, you have to submit it to MPCA in the report. And what did you do about it? How did you mitigate it? What did you, take care of it? And so, I'm not going to say it didn't happen, it did happen, but you address it. And that's the same is true with anything down the road that comes along. Regulations, they'll be addressed, and the dairy will match or abide by all regulations and exceed the expectations of that regulation. There's, you can look at our inspections and stuff. If there was something out of line, like a meter or something that hadn't been updated, we get it done and we file back the report. The inspector comes back and says, yep, that water meter was inspected and it's working properly. It didn't have, maybe we're a month or two out of compliance with that tag. But I can assure you folks that we are as concerned about the environment as you folks are. And with today's technologies, it allows us to move to a larger dairy facility, and that is the industry. And our family hopes to stay in the dairy industry, and in order to stay in business, we need to move on and compete with what's out there as far as facilities and design. They brought this map up here, and my take on it, I see the red along the coarse soils on the east side of the Mississippi. But also, one of the things about there's a lot of commercial fertilizer put out there. That commercial fertilizer is so potent. A little white drop of fertilizer is equal to a whole shovel full of manure. Where if the dairy is built, and they will have centrifuges, and the manure product that'll come off of the centrifuge will be able to be hauled up and worked with farmers up there to remove the commercial fertilizer and bring in this organic fertilizer. And the organic fertilizer is
Sir,
then,
let's get to the
is then
to wrapping up.
decomposed as in the process, where you will have actually less pollutants. So, in wrapping it up, I just want to let you know that we are concerned about the environment and being as environmentally friendly as possible. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Any public comment? Any public comment? Third and final time, any public comment? We will close this portion of the meeting to the public, and we will move on to the board additional questions, discussion. Okay. Yeah, we do have a couple of questions that needed to be answered and addressed. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I did take note of the questions, so I'm hoping I captured them all. And some of these I'm going to direct back to the applicant. So the first question I wrote down was about who is responsible for contamination. I think it depends on what it is. If it's due to over application of manure, or if it's due to a spill, or if it's the person responsible for remediating that is the person who caused that contamination. So whoever's over replicating, or who had the spill, or who inadequately cleaned it up. The next question I had was, has the dairy experienced any reportable spills? I think we just heard that they had. So I don't have record of reportable spills. Those get reported to the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, but my understanding is there was at least one. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. And then the other question I had written down was, why is this proposed location not closer to their existing facility, and what is the spec program? And I'll defer to the applicant to answer that.
We had explored other options close to the existing dairy where it was at. We all know about that. And through different processes, through working with the county engineer and their engineering firm Stantec, we came up with proximity far enough away where we weren't going to influence any county activities. And so this was the closest site that we could find that was remote enough in nature to allow us to do have the operation that we felt necessary.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Next.
I believe that's all I have written down. Did I miss anything?
There was only one question about diverting water north to the wetlands, but I think that's for the CUP, should it make it there. I don't think that's a Board of Adjustment question. That's
Okay.
it?
Yep, that's all
Okay.
I had.
Board members. Open back up before we get to the finding of fact criteria.
Mr. Chair.
Clint.
Just, won't be too long, a couple comments. One thing we got to look at is just some of the stuff that was talked about tonight. I think, it isn't going to be on our decisions on what we're doing tonight, okay? And I hope it don't make it sound like that we're just throwing it off, because it's going to be another part if this goes through, okay? We're looking at the ordinance and how that is. But some of the things to ease tonight, some of their concerns. One thing to think about is when we're all worried about manure and we're getting the public thinks it's a huge dairy, right? Okay. The biggest thing is the cow numbers in Morrison County are going down every year. Okay. There's less cows in Morrison County. That's a fact. Okay. The dairies are getting bigger. It's less farms. The same amount of tons of manure produced every year, actually probably less. More commercial fertilizers being used. Okay, yes, it's in a controlled area. Worried about runoff. Operation this size with all the scrutinization that they got with MCPA and everything, these things are designed to be 100% contained. Not only the barn itself, but also runoff. We'll see that in the CUP if it goes that far. So that's just some of the concerns. I don't know what about the comment I did have on my note here that, so we don't want somebody to thrive and get bigger in this county, but it's okay for Walmart to have dairies. If you don't want Walmart to have any bigger dairies, then we gotta support the people that are local that want to do something. So them are just some comments that I had. Just hearing the things, and hopefully maybe it eases a few people, some of them things. And the biggest part I want to say about tonight is everything we're deciding tonight is factual. And in the future, when we go to, if we go to a CUP or if we do it for somebody else, we rely on the experts, okay? MCPA is an expert, DNR, soil and water. Okay, you look, tonight there was a comment about Crane Meadows, okay, that's one. They weren't here to say it's a problem. Soil and water isn't here tonight, and DNR is not here tonight. So that means that they don't think tonight what their role is doesn't take part of that. It might be later on in the process if it goes that far. But we take our leads because I'm not an expert in soils. I'm not an expert in water. We take all of our stuff from the experts, okay? So that's all I had to say.
Thank you, Clint.
Mr. Chairman?
George.
I just got one comment to what Clint said and a question for them, but the first comment is, I did some research. In 1998, there were 1,070,000 cows in Minnesota. Today, there are 440,000 cows. So to me, that translates to a lot less animal waste. So my next question would be for Jake and Brooke would be noise and smell. Is that gonna, are they even gonna know you're there?
So with this new facility, we are not constructing a feed lot or feed center operation to gain feed. So the bulk of the operation will still be at the current Enchanted site. There will actually only be 3 operating machines in this barn. It's a skid loader to push manure into a flush flume, a bedding machine, and also a feed push-up machine. All 3 of these machines are contained within the barn. They don't go outside. Odor will be mitigated through processes that can be, determined by the MPCA if odor mitigation is needed further than what we're doing. But there's definitely ways that we showed on our slideshow on how there's probably 7 or 8 different processes we can implement.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Marv.
I want to piggyback off of comments because this is what Shannon went ahead and also stated. She had said she just came back from a dairy producers seminar, and he talked about the amount of dairy cows and the herds. The herds actually have been going down, just as Clint and George have said. And he said, what does Morrison County want? Do we want to have one or a few large facilities, or do we want to have facilities that are probably owned by a few individuals and scattered throughout the counties? So what does Morrison County want? That is the direction of that. Still my concerns are here, and I didn't get any real answers about nitrogen and phosphorus levels and where it's going. They talked about the CUP, and I wish that information would have been brought here tonight. It would help me to digest and feel more at ease that this would make more sense. I like this proposal better than the other one because when we have the county engineer not supporting it for various reasons, and also with their manure wanting to go ahead and be having the most advanced technology and put it down to a manure that can be hauled, because transporting manure is not cheap. Putting it through hoses, possible leaks. Obviously, I think we all know when you're putting the manure on, injecting it, we can smell it right in town. But it's worked in, as the Millers have proved and Corals have proved, they're good stewards of the land and doing that right away. But, you know, I would feel more at ease saying, hey, do we have enough data tonight to say where we can vary from this ordinance? That's where I feel.
Mr. Chair?
Amy?
There was a bit of information provided with the application, and I'm going to pull that up just as a reminder. So within your packet, there was a nutrient management plan summary. It also included a map. We also did request soil testing information, which the consultant did provide, only for phosphorus though, because I don't believe nitrogen has been done. So I think we can certainly ask the consultant to talk about that. I think I also have this was submitted by the consultant. These are the phosphorus levels that you had provided, Ian?
Yeah, that's correct. So part of the NPDS permit requirements that the dairy is held to is to take and maintain soil tests current to every 4 years. So they are actively soil testing all their fields on at the most a 4-year cycle for phosphorus, organic matter, potassium. Currently, the MPCA does not require 2-foot nitrate soil tests to be taken, so that has not been conducted. And so part of the application to the MPCA, if it gets that far, also will include additional acres outside of the fields that are being operated by Caros. We recognize that there is probably not a large enough land base that they operate to facilitate the manure. That's part of the consideration with the solid separation, be able to separate that solid, transport it further down the road to fields that would at that time have a soil test taken on it. We can determine what the agronomic rates would be in this part of the world. We know soil test phosphorus levels do build relatively quickly. So having an abundance of manure or acres available for manure application is definitely a key piece that'll be looked at in the environmental assessment worksheet as well as the manure management plan by the MPCA.
Mr. Chair, so this is what you had provided to us with the phosphorus levels.
Yep.
And so they are quite high now. So will a future manure management plan incorporate a phosphorus reduction plan, or will it utilize other acreage?
Sure.
Or what's the plan for reducing this already very high phosphorus?
Right, yep, good question. So again, part of the requirements are the MPCA puts thresholds for soil test phosphorus levels for no application, which would be 150 part per million Bray or higher. There's a level between 75 and 150 part per million Bray where we would have to apply the manure at a 6-year crop removal of phosphorus application. And then anything below that 75 part per million of phosphorus, we can apply on a nitrogen need basis, assuming we're outside of any sensitive features. So that will all get taken into consideration in the future manure management plan. And we will also determine what additional acres would be needed if we have fields that are above those thresholds. The soil test monitoring over time would ensure that we are following and achieving the goals of either the 6-year phosphorus removal plan, if we're in that category, and it would also give us an indication on the fields that are in excess of phosphorus levels, how quickly we're drawing some of those nutrients down by not applying the phosphorus, and when those fields would be available again for manure application if they ever get below those thresholds again.
Mr. Chair, one more question.
Yes.
And is this monitoring done on fields where there's transferred manure? I mean, is that monitored on the sites that they're transferring manure to as well?
Right, so it is currently under the current NPDS permit is the responsibility of the person receiving the manure to have the current soil test. However, it is proposed at the MPCA right now that under the new 2026 NPDS permit, anybody that is selling the manure would have to collect that soil test from the recipient, so we would have those records.
So your plan is incorporating that so this plan that would be developed for this facility would be incorporating that practice?
That's correct, and based on the timeline of when things would proceed through the EAW and the NPDS permit application, I anticipate us applying for that next 2026 NPDS permit. I don't think we'll be at a point to be able to apply for the permit for the existing one. That's not for sure, but that's what's anticipated at this time.
Marvin, does that answer any of your questions?
Mr. Chair, it answers some of them. My next question is, on this site that you're planning on putting the building, where are the phosphorus levels at now?
Yeah, we could pull that back up. I believe the soil tests on that field are relatively high, which if we look there, I believe
What is it called?
Yeah, I believe it's a Smith
South.
Is that, Smith South?
Yep.
Smith Pivot South?
Yep.
That's 168 parts per million. You said anytime you get over 150 is concerns.
Yep.
So when you get over that, is that from over applying, or how does it get to that level, or why did it get to that level?
Yeah, I was going to say that's a very complex soil chemistry question that we can get into, but the parent material in this part of the world is very conducive for building soil test phosphorus. pHs are right, the soil chemistries are right. We just have naturally high phosphorus in a lot of the soils around here. Manure application or any fertilizer application, synthetic or organic for that matter, will build those soil tests potentially. So I guess one thing I would say about putting the facility on that particular site is obviously that's a high testing field. We take that land out of production to put it into the dairy facility. There obviously wouldn't be any manure application on that field anymore. So that, in a sense, alleviates one of our high testing fields.
Okay.
I'd like to add.
Yeah.
Also cropping practices. So, I've mentioned to you that chopping silage removes the most phosphorus, but on that particular field, we've combined it for high moisture corn. And so that allows for building unusual to what our cropping practices are. So by switching rotations and utilizing different crops, you can drive that down pretty fast.
Okay, that'd be great. So if I'm correct, I don't believe lawn fertilizers that people can purchase can't have phosphorus in it because the regulations stated that it was, they're concerned about runoffs going to lakes and waters, and, that, I don't know if people are educated with that. I'm thinking they are, but I'm just bringing it to, it's concern, obviously, but if it's managed well, and, that was, and through the CUP, we will see the manure management plan and everything else. I know this is just the beginning of the process, but as we getting pressures from all sides, and we want to be able to make a very good, educated decision by the information brought forward. And a lot of good information. I wish the other information I would have is, the nitrate well testings around there, what has changed in the last few years, what has changed. And the rest, I'm very satisfied with what I'm hearing, but that's another portion that I'm concerned about in the other phone calls and people that approach me that are concerned about it too. So thank you.
Thanks, Marvin. Ian, how long have you been at Central?
I've been with Central for just over 12 years.
How many farms have you worked with 5,000 head like this?
Probably a half a dozen.
Same issues, phosphorus in the ground?
Locationally different. Some are phosphorus, some are nitrogen concerns, some aren't really any concerns.
How successful have you been in managing or consulting with that farm in driving those numbers to a more appropriate or reasonable level?
Yeah, again, a little bit regionally dependent. I think Jake hit that nail on the head. A lot of it is farming practices. If we can manage a more diverse crop rotation, alfalfa is a phenomenal tool for driving phosphorus down, pulling that out of the soil. Utilizing silage and removing more of the stover versus just the grain. That's another very effective tool. And some areas you can drive it down very quickly. Some areas it takes a little bit more time.
What about this area?
Yeah, central Minnesota is inherently high testing phosphorus, so it takes more time. Yeah, it takes more time.
Okay. George?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
So with that being said, would you potentially run out of land within the area of the farm for it to be a problem?
I think there's an abundance of land that's not currently receiving manure in the area. I think that we may potentially, and we've seen this in other cases, have to seek out additional acres. But I think that having good standings with neighbors, good working relationship with neighbors, I think that there is a value to other farmers to take that manure and apply it to their land, especially if they need the nutrients and they have an economic value for it. I think there's plenty of acres in the neighborhood, especially with the technology of the separated solids that we could reach with the manure product that's going to be generated. So what might be the acres in the manure plan next year when we formulate it might be different than what it is in 10 years, but I think there's going to be land available to utilize.
Thank you.
Okay, finding the fact criteria, questions? Number one, is the request in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the Morrison County Land Use Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan? George?
The proposed state-of-the-art facility with its new technologies, ventilation, odor control, waste management show a commitment to environmental stewardship. The proposed location of the confinement feedlot in relation to the location of neighboring residences in most cases exceeding setback requirements show a respect for nearby residents and also the applicant's desire to maintain positive relationships. The intentional use of groundwater and purposeful control of surface water demonstrates commitment to environmental administration. Morrison County promotes a vigorous, lasting agricultural industry. The applicant's continued investment demonstrates a long-term dedication to the economic support of Morrison County. So therefore, the request is in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the Land Use Ordinance and Comp Plan.
Thank you, George. Anybody else?
Mr. Chair,
Clint?
just have something to add that I think is important to this. I had down that all the requirements of this ordinance are met except for the exceeding the animal cap unit. And if we look at, when we re-looked at the animal cap unit number of years ago, which 3 or 4, I don't remember the exact year, that was done by about 15 to 16 people. That was the County Board of Commissioners, our board, Soil and Water, DNR, different people on that. And at that time, it was decided that they wanted to take this animal cap thing, not take it off, but allow it to go through the variance process. So I think when we look at this, yes, it is in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the county, because it meets everything. And then the county, we went ahead and said we want them to come to a variance proceeding like this so that we can dissect it a little bit more and make sure that everything's being met. So I would say yes.
Mr. Chair?
Marv?
I agree with most of what was said here, and as my concerns about the nitrates, my concerns about the phosphorus levels seem that they should be addressed in the EW process and CUP. And they have the right to bring this forward like that, and with the information that we brought, it is in harmony that way.
Thank you, Marv. Question 2, is the applicant proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the land use ordinance? Clint?
Well, I read through the applicant's question, how they answered it, and I kind of agree with their statement. And their statement was the proposal of a new dairy facility on a proposed parcel is a reasonable use of the parcel. The property has been preliminarily evaluated based on size, slope, and proximity of required setbacks for sustainability of the proposed dairy. Upon approval of variance, a full site investigation, including technical investigations, will be completed as part of the NPDS permit application and required by law. There are no setback restriction variances being requested for the proposed facility ordinance for setback locations. My notes where meets all setbacks, the property looks to kind of naturally drain inward. I think when you look at it, I stated earlier, also part of this would be that it's a totally contained facility, not only contained as far as the animals in the building, but also all runoff is contained in when you get up to this size. So that would be my answer for question 2. Yes, I would agree that it's a reasonable use of this land.
Thank you, Clint. Question 3, will the issuance of the variance maintain the essential character of the locality? I'll take that one. We've heard from public comment tonight and even the neighbors here about how we are in an agricultural zone. We talked about the different locations, how far off the highway we've been, and how far we are on all of those setbacks as well. So as far as maintaining essential character, it's meeting those requirements. Anybody else?
I would just add that to the general public, it's off 27, 3/4 miles in a rural area. It's its own ag. But to the general public, if you drive by and you look at a dairy, and if it's a 1,000 cow barn or if it's a 10,000 cow barn, the average person ain't gonna know how many cows are in there. They're just gonna say that's a big barn, right? So I would think that it is gonna be no different than some of the other barns that are around the county or in the area when they look at for their size.
Thank you, Clint.
Mr. Chair?
Marv?
So something that wasn't discussed, and it is ag, and it'll be an ag area, and what was brought up that they will have their units basically inside the barn, but you're gonna have the trucks, tractors, whatever hauling, going up and down the road through it. And through the CUP, that's talked about, and it's gotta be worked through the county and the township about the traveling and all that. But that's addressed in the CUP.
Okay, thank you. Question 4, is the alleged practical difficulty due to circumstances unique to the property? Marv?
Well, what they ended up putting down, their practical difficulty, is the ordinance of the animal cap. Well, so something I'm reading into this here, and if you read through the worksheet, when no other alternative exists, particularly if the public water is at stake or impaired or risk of being impaired. Them are the questions I really can't give a good answer to. I really can't. But if they were saying the difficulty is the ordinance, yeah, it is a part of it, but I don't see something else, and I'm lost with this one.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Clinton.
What I had wrote down on here, if I can read my writing, because I got it in pencil, so I can't really read, but unique is that here is what's unique to this is this property that meets all setbacks. How many places do we look at that can't meet all setbacks? And in a couple of the setbacks, it can be met twice. So that means a setback can be met twice. Applicable soil type, location is fairly remote to the other residences. This is all unique. That's the property. To the other portion of the practical difficulty, I'd say what's driving this whole thing is the industry driven to survive, low margins, high cost, just survival of the dairy and what the industry is demanding now. So that's what I had down for the practical difficulty.
Thank you, Clint. George?
I'll just add one more thing to that. They also, the animal cap is prohibitive for long-term investment and sustainability of the dairy industry, and you're seeing that all over the country.
Thank you, George. Question 5 is the need for the variance created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowners. George?
I believe so. The variance need is created by industry trends of larger herds, efficient milk production, and ability to invest and sustain a business into the next generation.
Thank you, George. Okay, question 6, does the alleged practical difficulty involve more than just economic considerations? Clint?
Yes, anything we look at in ag, I think is directly driven by economics, but I think it's not just economics here. Also, it's caused by caution to protect the community, which is duly notable. But we could refute some of that with some of the technologies that are out there and things like that. I think it's just the industry, again, like I said earlier, is forcing this. They're not really trying to save any money. They're not doing this here to save money. I would argue that if you're going to split it up into two 2,500 cow dairies, it's going to cost the applicants more. Yes, we know that, but this is a big undertaking. I think granted, we're not going to look back, but if you look at the proposal we looked at a couple months ago, would have saved the money compared to this. So I think there's a lot of factors in this, and we went through and answered all them questions, and I think you could pick something out of each one of them questions to tie to this last question.
Mr. Chair?
Marv?
I disagree with that, because what I'm thinking about, and I've had this brought more to my attention, and it's, I think majority of it is money driven. I think, and where I look at it, I heard it over and over, as I have a neighbor that supports 4 families off of 240 cows. Well-ran operation. The reason they were chosen Family of the Year, and good quality farmers too. But here, and they're making it, granted, it's the Carls want to share this, work with the neighbors, they're thinking about things. But the majority behind this is economics. It's about the dollar. And that's the part that makes me a little nervous.
Thank you, Marv.
Mr. Chairman,
George?
I'll just add one more thing, kind of pony back on what Clint said. The new technology that they're going to implement in this barn, they're not inexpensive. I mean, I guess I can't imagine how much it's going to cost them to put in what they're going to put in, but it will ensure stewardship of animal, land, water, and air quality resources, and that's why they're putting it in.
Thank you, George. Okay, moving on to the vote. Question 1, is the request in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the Morrison County Land Use Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan? George?
Yes.
Clint?
Yes.
John is yes. Marv?
Yes.
Question 2, is the applicant proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by land use ordinance? Clint?
Yes.
John is yes. Marv?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
Question 3, will the issuance of the variance maintain the essential character of the locality? John is yes. Marv?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
Clint?
Yes.
Question 4, is the alleged practical difficulty due to circumstances unique to the property? Marv?
No.
George?
Yes.
Clint?
Yes.
John is yes. Question 5, is the need for the variance created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowners? George?
Yes.
Clint?
Yes.
John is yes. Marv?
No.
Question 6, does the alleged practical difficulty involve more than just economic considerations? Clint?
Yes.
John is yes. Marv?
No.
George?
Yes.
Have all the questions answered to the affirmative? Do I have a motion to approve the variance as requested?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve this variance application.
Second?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a second.
Motion was made by Clint and seconded by George to approve the requested variance. All in favor? George?
Aye.
Marv?
Nay.
Clint?
Aye.
John is aye. Variance is approved. And please work with the Amy, Miss Amy, as you move forward onto the next parts of the phase. And thank you for your time.
Good luck with it.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, if you're gonna do your conversations, just do them out in the hall, please. We gotta finish. I gotta get home. I got things to do. Stish, move. I just had them. What do I do with them? My agenda. There we go. Thank you so much for your time tonight, folks. All right, we're going. Agenda item number 2, new or old business.
Mr. Chair, I do not have any new or old business.
Okay, approval of the minutes. Any questions, issues with the minutes?
Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion that we approve the March 18th minutes.
Is there a second?
Second that.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Minutes approved. Nothing else on the agenda. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Meeting adjourned at 8:44.